This is 2021's Night Teeth. Warning, spoilers ahead. According to the narrator, there's a bunch of vampires living right under everyone's noses, and she mentions an area in LA called Boyle Heights. After years of fighting, a truce was made, and the vampires agreed to live in secret. Over time, the humans forgot to be afraid of vampires, but the vampires have been growing their strength. The 3 rules are to live in secret, only feed on the willing, and don't enter Boyle Heights without permission. But are these rules taught in a school or announced on the T? At the laundromat, Jay surprises Maria, and they go about their way. Jay starts to notice someone pulling up behind him, and he says that the pursuers shouldn't be over here. As the car pulls up beside him, Jay prepares himself for the worst, and after getting away, Jay sends Maria off alone. Jay pulls up to a building with the Boyle Heights symbol on it, but once he gets inside, he finds that he's too late to warn his other friends. Just then, Maria is attacked, and Jay comes outside to find that she's been taken. Later, we meet Benny as he sleeps through his class at college. He doesn't seem to be too popular, but he's still doing all right as he goes about his studies and skateboarding around the city. Benny pretty much looks like your everyday college student. Dude is making good money writing other people's essays, though. Is that a lucrative business to jump into? Benny has big plans for building a musical empire, but he tells his friends that his tracks just aren't ready to sample yet. Eventually, he gets home after running some errands, and he finds Abuela has been cooking dinner for both of them. Abuela talks about how she's going to die someday, and she thinks that Benny needs to be prepared to take care of himself. Benny tells her not to talk like that, and he heads to his room to work on his tracks. He's interrupted when he hears Jay making phone calls in his room, and he tries to see if Jay will let him drive a car in his chauffeur business. He should have been doing that job the whole time. Full-time Uber drivers could make great money in LA. Benny notices Jay packing up some weapons, and he feels like something bad is about to happen. To make it up to Jay for heading out on a bad note, he agrees to let him chauffeur people for the night, but he warns him to pretend to be him since everything is in his name. Benny couldn't be happier, and he heads to Beverly Hills to pick up his client. This feels very irresponsible because Jay actually says that Benny doesn't even have a license. Soft heart or not, you don't let Benny get behind the wheel. That night, Benny arrives at the house, and he waits for his clients to come out. Soon, Blair comes out, and Benny is almost at a loss of words. After awkwardly telling Benny that his zipper is down, Blair has Benny help her into the car, and they wait for her other friend. Suddenly, Zoe shows up, and she hops in the back with Blair. It's very clear to them that Benny is new to this, and Zoe gives him a list of parties they have to hit before morning. As they head to the first one, police rush by to the house, but Blair distracts Benny by asking what he'd do if this was his last night on Earth. That's not a creepy conversation to have on a dark road at all. The first place they pull up to looks awesome though, and I'd be pretty disappointed to just wait in the car. Meanwhile, Jay meets up with Andre, and he admits that the peace in Boyle Heights is broken after 3 generations. Andre assures him that it isn't his fault though. Back at the party, Benny hears a scream come from the mansion, and he decides to get out of the car. Before he can really get anywhere, Blair and Zoe barge out of the building with booze in their hands. The next location is completely different than the first one as they pull into a parking garage, and Benny notices a familiar symbol on the door. While Benny waits, he hears one of the women's phones go off in the back, and he finds out that someone named Victor set the women up with Jay as their driver. Benny tries to call Jay to warn him about things, and he just leaves a voicemail. Nope, it's time to think about calling it quits for the night. Especially after finding bloody money in the bag in the back. Fresh blood, too. So fresh that it splats Benny in the face. Suddenly, the police pull into the parking garage searching for someone, and Benny tries to hide in the driver's seat with blood still on his face. After a moment, he decides that he's better off sneaking around the garage to avoid the cop, and he ends up running into the building where the party is at. It turns out to be a very big hotel and bar, and things seem rather quiet. Benny is stopped by the concierge, who only ends up letting him in after seeing the gem that Benny picked up at the first stop. After seeing this, she escorts him to the elevator to show him to the members-only event. Do you see the elevator key she uses? I want a key like that for something. You can only get into my house with an oversized key. The concierge tells Benny to drink responsibly before leaving him to go into the room at the end. Once Benny sees inside, he finds Blair and Zoe drinking the blood of 2 victims. After Zoe pins Benny to the wall, he finally admits that he isn't Jay. Zoe wants to kill Benny, but Blair thinks that he could lead them to the real Jay. It turns out that Blair and Zoe are drinking more than they're supposed to, and they're actually killing the humans that they're feeding off of. Benny runs back to the parking garage to escape, and he tries to explain things to the cop waiting down there. After hearing Benny's story, the cop tries to put him in a death trap of a trunk. What kind of police do they have in LA now? Actually, don't answer that. Just then, Blair and Zoe make it to the parking garage, and they say that Benny is with them and to let him go. The officer asks if they killed anyone against the rules, and he threatens to call a higher-up named Victor. The women assure him that they're following the rules, but Benny knows better. Meanwhile, Victor is drinking some of his private reserve of blood, and we see that he has a whole stock of humans that he's draining. He makes his way into town, but Benny is still driving Blair and Zoe around to their stops. Benny just keeps trying to run, but I think he forgot that vampires are freaking vampires and way more powerful and quicker than humans. Victor pulls up to a house where Eva and Grace confront him about violating the truce, and they assure him that they're going to end him. Victor tries to get them to see things his way, though, but the others accuse him of starting a war with Jay. He reveals that he's got girls in town destroying their secret network, and he says that he's going to kill them to take control. Back in town, Blair is really trying to get Benny to calm down, and she tries to have a heart-to-heart to make him understand the situation that he's been thrown into. She explains that there are bosses who run territories like the mob, and she tries to get Benny to give up Jay so she can take him to Victor at the end of their route. Around the corner, Zoe calls Victor, her boyfriend, to tell him that they got Benny instead of Jay, and he tells her to go ahead with the plan. Jay and his boys head to the first mansion to search for Jay, and they find the bloodbath that Blair and Zoe left behind. Jay finds Gio, one of the bosses, and he finds out where the girls went to next. Back at the gas station, Zoe talks to Benny about how much he likes Blair, but their visit is cut short when she thinks that the clerk is snitching. He wasn't. Poor dude was talking to his mom about picking up cat food. Benny takes the girls to the next stop, and he tries to talk them into letting them go. Benny assures them that he'll keep their secret, but that definitely doesn't work. They convince Benny to just go inside with him, and Blair makes it crystal clear that she wants him to stay in line to stay alive. Blair even helps Benny with his riz by kissing him in front of some of his school bullies. Now, Benny is definitely a little starstruck, and he follows Blair closely through the club. Outside, Jay and his crew are heading into the same club, but the girls are thrown off by finding someone else in the boss's seat. Blair feels like this is a trap, and sure enough, he's a vampire hunter with a whole bunch of hunter friends. When Benny hears the order to kill the girls, he decides to take out the main hunter, which allows the girls to finish the other ones. I'd say that Benny has definitely chosen a side, and I'm not sure there's any going back for him. Oh, but Jay is downstairs, and he's got the most confused look on his face. Now, Jay is just clearing through vampires right in front of everyone just because he saw Benny. Outside, Benny tries to make some demands, but Zoe reminds him that he's not really in a position to make demands. This conversation is cut short as more hunters start shooting crossbows at them, and Benny manages to get them out of there safely. At the same time, Jay runs into the crossbow hunters, the Night Legion, and they try to recruit him to their side of the cause, which is way more harsh than Jay and his crew. Zoe and Blair ask Benny to take them somewhere safe to lay low since a bunch of hunters are after them, and his first thought is to take them to his abuela's. Abuela can handle her own, though. She almost takes Benny's head off with a bat. Jay ends up getting pulled over by the rotten cop, and he tells them that Victor wants to meet him in 30 minutes. Back at Abuela's house, she tends to Benny's cut hand, and Blair shows her sweeter side as she takes over. Abuela is surprised that Benny is bringing girls home, but she tells him that she likes Blair way more than Zoe. In the other room, Zoe calls Victor to tell him that she's worried, and she plans on taking out Benny and his Abuela. Victor assures her that everything is fine, but he thinks that they need Benny for a little bit longer. In Jay's room, Benny goes through a box in the closet to gather some vampire killing tools, but he stops when he hears Blair going through things in his room. Blair is a keeper. She loves everything in the room, and she's all about his music. And she likes anime? Yep. Become a vampire and marry her right now. Abuela can be a witness. Blair pours on the compliments while talking to Benny, and he tries to find out more about her hobbies or past. Blair found Zoe at a rager in the 70s, and she turned her into a vampire during one of them. Just before the two of them almost kiss again, Zoe barges in and tells them that they need to get going. Blair thinks that Benny is okay to stay here, but Zoe tells her that they need to keep him with them. Benny actually ends up volunteering to go with them. Across town, Jay goes to meet Victor, and he tries to find out what's happened to Benny and Maria. Victor wants to monologue a bit at first, and he points out that nobody is going to walk away from him this night. Jay puts a round right through the middle of his head, and he literally heals in 10 seconds. Why is Jay so much more powerful than any of the others? Benny, Zoe, and Blair head to the final spot, but Rocco isn't too sure about letting Benny in. After toying with Benny, he finally lets all of them in, and Blair has to back up Benny the whole time. Suddenly, Rocco realizes that this visit is very unorthodox, but Zoe calms him down by coming onto him. Blair takes Benny out back so Zoe can handle business, and Benny thinks that Blair is crazy for how calm she is while doing all of this. Blair assures him that it's not always like this, and sometimes being a vampire is strictly awesome, but she makes it clear that it's not like that all the time either. Zoe seems like she's always awesome, but she's a special character. Speaking of Zoe, she's getting ready to handle business outside, but Rocco is one step ahead of her. Whoa! Blair and Benny are about to get it on that couch. What a great time to start a fight. Worst timing ever. Blair rushes in to help Zoe, and Benny goes to get the car. Crap's hitting the fan out here though, because Zoe has an arrow through her torso, the Night Legion is attacking them, and Rocco's guys are attacking from their side as well. Luckily, Blair is awesome, and Benny gets them out of there. As they drive, it's clear that Zoe isn't going to last long, and the sun is coming over the horizon. They arrive at the last stop just in time, and Blair tells Benny to take the car and run because this is Victor's house. Benny wants to save Jay though, and he decides not to listen to Blair. In fact, he does the most idiotic thing possible. He decides to go in with a freaking bat on his own. Benny finds Jay locked up as a blood bag, and sure enough, Victor catches him. Zoe is pretty happy to see him, but Blair isn't. Benny tries to barter for Jay's life, but Victor isn't really feeling like taking this deal. Blair doesn't like how they're treating Benny, and she tries to stand up to Zoe and Victor. Zoe is heartbroken though, and she actually wounds Blair. Now, Benny puts his plan in motion, and he has the car remotely drive itself into the wall, and the sun kills Zoe. That's nice, but he really decided to waste that trump card on Zoe instead of Victor? You know, the all-powerful one? Yep, Victor bites Benny, and that's pretty much that. Luckily, Jay is smarter than him, and he tackles Victor into the sunlight. Blair rushes to Benny's side, and she assures him that everything is going to be okay. She gives him blood to drink, and they form a feeding circle as she feeds on him as well. That's cute in a dark way, I guess. I don't really see how that helps them, though. They lose blood as they drink blood, but let's not question the story that much. That evening, Benny wakes up in bed at his abuela's house, and he heads out to eat. Jay tells him to never forget where he came from, but they're still always going to be family. Benny leaves Jay a bag full of money, and he goes to the college library. You turn into a vampire, and the one place you go is the school library? That's a sad existence. Benny starts to feel the urge to drink blood, and eventually, he runs into his crappy classmates just as Blair speeds around in a Maserati to pick him up. Before leaving, Benny invites them in for a ride, and he lets his fangs out. Then, the credits roll. This was cheesy, but it was definitely entertaining all the way around. Movies like this are fun from time to time, and I'd definitely say to check this out. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.